not me, and not you either. So let's get our comments working here, and then we'll have some fun. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the highlight of human civilization. It's called Coffee with Scott Adams, and you've never had a better time. But if you'd like to try to take your experience up to levels that nobody can even understand with their tiny, shiny human brains, all you need is a cup or mug or a glass, of tank or chalice, a stein, a canteen jug or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure of the dopamine hit of the day. The thing that makes everything better is called a simultaneous sip, and it happens now. Go. That was siptastic. Well, it's Sunday, and usually this happens on Saturday, but today Owen Gregorian will be hosting a Spaces right after the show. Spaces is the audio service that's on the X platform. So if you want to listen to that, go to X, look for Owen Gregorian, or you can see the link in my feed. Well, I wonder if there's any science that I didn't need to do because they could have just asked me. Oh, here's some. Eric Nolan writing in SciPost. He's my favorite. Did you know that people who inhaled DMT, they got rapid and lasting antidepressant effects? Do you know how I knew that was going to be true? Because every single time they try a hallucinogen, and it doesn't matter which one, and they test it on depressed people, every single time it works. And not only does it work, it has a lasting benefits. Maybe not lifetime, but lasting. So maybe they didn't need to test this. Maybe they could have just asked me, hey, what do you think would happen if we give this depressed guy some DMT? I'd be like, well, I think he'll get happier. That's what I think. You probably saw some of the news that a Mexican naval vessel crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge Saturday night. Now, the surprising part about this story is Mexico has a navy. How many of you knew that Mexico even had a navy? Do they? Well, I guess they do. This particular ship was a tall ship, so a sail ship with very tall sails, and I guess those sails were too tall. But I think there was some kind of engine problem or something that caused them to smash into the bridge. I saw that there were casualties, but then I saw some other reports. So I'm not sure exactly how many casualties, but they do have. I think most likely they do. So that was bad. In a related story, Red State Ward Clark is writing that the Mexican cartels are now dealing in the illicit fish trade. So they're becoming fishermen, and they're squeezing out the non-cartel people and, elbowing their way in, and they're in the fish business. Now, this raises some questions. Why is it that they're in the fish business? Is it because selling fish is as profitable as cocaine? I don't think so. I don't think the margins are nearly as good. Is it because they have so many recruits who want to join the cartel that they don't have enough cocaine to keep them all busy? It's like, all right. Only the people with seniority get to do the cocaine. We're going to have to put you on something, sort of an entry level thing. All right. Okay. Excellent. I got my tattoos. I'm ready to go. What kind of exciting criminal activity will I be involved in? Well, Juan, we're going to put you in fish. Excuse me? Fish. You'll be in fish. I didn't join the cartel to be in fish. I know, but got to start somewhere. If you do a good job in fish, we'll move you to, I don't know what, stealing cars. But eventually, you could work your way up to the cocaine business. But seriously, doesn't it seem to you that this is driven by too many people in the cartel? Like, would they really enter the fish business unless they had more people than they had jobs for the people? Watching the cartels diversify, it's telling us something, but I don't know exactly what it is. Now, I guess you could say that the cartels are just taking over every business in Mexico, and fish are just one of them. I suppose that's true. Well, there's a company I've told you about before, and I even wrote about it in one of my books called Climeworks. And it's these giant sucking machines that suck the CO2 out of the air. Oh no, they'll take all my CO2 and my plants will die. Don't they know that CO2 is plant food? I just said that so you don't have to. But the idea was they were trying to reduce the risk of climate change by having gigantic machines that suck the CO2 out. But now that they've been running these machines for a while, turns out that the machines add more CO2 to the. It adds more CO2 than it removes. Now you can't fail harder than that. I'm sorry, Climeworks. I really thought you had a chance, but no. Turns out that they're not that efficient, and it just makes things worse. Or if you like your CO2 because it's good for plant food, makes things better. It would be funny if you learned that the plants were growing really well wherever there was a Climeworks machine because they had added more CO2 than they'd removed from the atmosphere. Does it seem to you that every climate change story now looks different? Is it my imagination, or is climate change sort of as a concept now so debunked that whenever there's a story, it's about something not working, or some estimate that wasn't true, or some variable that they forgot? There's something definitely happening in the climate change world. And I like to end this by saying, wait till you find out about the climate models. Because we live in a world where everything from the Autopen, which we'll talk about, to the Mexican Navy, literally just nothing works. But we're supposed to believe that these complicated models predicting the climate for 40 years, we're supposed to believe that those are accurate. Oh my. Anyway, according to Live Science, one of the problems with AI models is they can't tell time or read a calendar. Now, I guess they can tell time if they do it the digital way. But if you show AI a picture of a clock, it can't tell you what time it is. Isn't that weird? You'd think it would be able to do that easily. And the same with a calendar. So it's not that it doesn't understand time and calendars, but if you show it a picture of one, it gets confused. And it's really terrible. The failure rate is, like 40%, 25%, in that range. Well, here's some possibly good news until it turns out to be yet another thing that doesn't work. According to Interesting Engineering, there's a European firm that's going to use nuclear waste to generate their own nuclear power plant. And they're going to have power for 250,000 homes. It's a company called Thorizon. Now, you knew that this was a potential technology. It's something I've been talking about for years. Other people have been talking about it, and I've been telling you about it. But the idea is that nuclear waste still has 90% of its potential for power. But they don't have machines that can use the extra 90%. So there's a new kind of machine. I think it's what kind of technology? It's one that you've heard of before. It's a molten salt reactor. So they haven't built it yet, but they got the funding, they got the plans, they're going to build it. And this would be amazing. It would power 250,000 households for 40 years with nuclear waste. So, you know how we worried about nuclear waste when I was a kid? Like that was the biggest thing people worried about. Where are we going to put all that nuclear waste? Well, if this thing works, and I'm pretty sure it will, it turns out that nuclear waste is just your fuel for your thorium. Is it thorium? It's probably thorium because the name of the company is Thorizon. I thought I said that somewhere, but I'm looking at my notes. Yeah, I think it's a thorium. Well, Vivek Ramaswamy's bid to become governor of Ohio is looking a little more likely. According to the Daily Wire, the only person who was maybe going to give him a good fight for the nomination on the Republican side has dropped out. And that gives him a clear path to be the Republican nominee. So he's got a little competition, but nothing that would stop him. So Vivek Ramaswamy is one step closer to being the governor of Ohio. So that's, in case you're wondering why he's been so quiet, that's why he's going to be governor of Ohio. Do you think after he's governor of Ohio that he'll make a bid for the presidency? I'm going to say yes. I don't know if he'll do 1 or 2 terms as governor, but seems like that will be his preparation for running for president. I think it's coming. Well, as you know, you may have seen this if you're on social media. Trump posted a video that's a compilation of some of the mysterious deaths that are linked to Hillary Clinton. Now, every time I think that Trump can't be funnier or he can't be more provocative, he finds a way to do it. So you're probably aware that people have put together these lists of all these people who had mysterious deaths that were suspiciously good for Hillary Clinton. That's what people say. Now, it makes me wonder, could you pick any random high-level politician and find a bunch of deaths that you could argue, well, arguably this was good for that politician, so they must have been behind it? Or is this unique to her? Because if it's nothing but coincidence, you would think there would be at least one other notable politician that also has, just by coincidence, a whole bunch of people who died that were related to them, and their death somehow was a benefit to them. But I only know about one. I've never even heard of anyone else being accused of having a whole bunch of dead people around them that were suspiciously good for them, career-wise. So Trump prints that. Now, one of the ones, just so you know, do you remember when JFK Jr. died in his plane crash? And a lot of people said he likely was going to run for the Senate in New York. And he might have been the only person who could have beaten Clinton. And then the only person who could beat her suspiciously dies in a plane crash. Interesting. So that was one of them, but there were a bunch of them. Let's see, there was Seth Rich, Vince Foster, some intern, Mary Mahoney, and some others. So I was reading about this in the Gateway Pundit. So why do you think Trump did that? What do you think his motivation was for printing that? Well, I would say at least two possibilities. One is that it just absorbs attention, and it's going to make people just think about that instead of thinking about other things. And as long as you're thinking about the thing he wants you to think about, you don't have enough time to think about maybe things that would be negative to him. So the more he makes you think what he wants you to think, the better off he is. So we'll see. I don't have an opinion about how real any of these deaths are, in terms of being connected to Hillary, but it does look like there's a lot of deaths around Hillary. It does seem like a pretty big set of coincidences. All right. So I wasn't going to talk about this, but I just have to. This whole Comey 86 thing, people got really mad at me, and I'm going to help you out here on how to think about it. So, number one, if you have complete certainty that Comey knew exactly what he was doing, and it was a call to have Trump assassinated, I would say that's the worst take. Not that you're wrong, but that you have a certainty about what a stranger is thinking. The certainty is just a mistake. You've lived in a world where you've been surprised before about things you were certain about. And there's nothing less certain than how somebody else is thinking. Now, part of what bothers me about this story is it's so damn boring because everybody just says the same 5 things, but they say them really angrily if you don't agree. All right. So I'm going to sort of say the same 5 things and see if you agree with me. Number one, it comes down to what Comey was thinking. Would you agree? Because if you knew magically, oh, he wasn't thinking about assassination, he was just thinking about removing him from office. And I'm not saying that's what he was thinking, because how would I know? I can't read his mind. So if I told you I'm certain that he was thinking it was innocent, well, that would be a mistake. Just as certain, if you said, I'm certain he was thinking, maybe I can get people to assassinate him if I do this. Hold on, my light went out. All right. If you want to say that in his role as head of the FBI, he should have known that that was a call to assassination, I would say you don't know that. You don't know that at all. Because here's what I think. Even if you had only heard that term in the restaurant business, which would be my case, I've only heard it in the restaurant business. Do you think I would be confused if I saw a movie where somebody was a professional sniper and their partner or their boss said, once they had lined up the sights on somebody, the professional sniper, and the boss said, all right, 86 them. Do you think I would be confused about what 86 meant in that context? No, not at all. Suppose it was a professional hitman for the mafia, and I saw the movie and somebody said, all right, we're going to 86 Vito. Even if I'd never heard that word being used in that context, would I be confused about what it meant? No, that would be completely true, because that's how words work. You can wax your car and nobody thinks that's assassinating the car. But if a mafia hitman said, I'm going to wax Vito, you would know that wax meant kill Vito. So the word means a different thing based on the context. Now, here's the interesting thing. We don't think that Comey arranged the shells himself, right? Can you give me a fact check on that? I believe he just saw it and then thought, oh, I'm going to take a picture of this. Do you think that even if Comey would have definitely known if he'd heard 86 in the context of a hitman or the mafia, just like you and me, he would have definitely known that was a call for violence in those contexts. But when he saw seashells on the beach, are you still so sure that he thought that was a clear call to violence? Now, we can't believe what he says. He said, oh, I didn't realize that was interpreted as violence, so I took it down. But how many of you believe that Comey, being the sophisticated, clever guy you think he is, said to himself, I think I'll do a call for assassination with these seashells, and then I'll post it on Instagram, and everything will be fine? How many of you think that that was his thought process? That he was going to call for assassination, post it on social media, and that there wouldn't be any problem with that? Because that would be super stupid. It wouldn't be super clever. It would be super stupid. So, is he super stupid? Or is he somebody who saw the context was seashells that somebody else put there and thought they probably weren't thinking about murdering him? They probably just wanted to get rid of him. And he thought, oh, it's clever that you could put these two numbers together, 86 and 47. So here's my take. We don't know what he was thinking. But if you're 100% sure that Comey saw seashells on the beach and took a picture of them and thought that he was going to call for assassination and post it on Instagram, and that would be a good play, that's not a good take. Not 100% sure. If you tell me, I think he might have been thinking that, I would say, he might have been. If you say he might not have been thinking that, and he was just not really thinking of anything, and he didn't think it through, I would say, maybe. But if you're positive, you're 100% sure you know what he was thinking when he did it, that's a terrible take. It's a terrible take. Could you be right? Yes. Yes, you could. Am I telling you that he definitely was not thinking that it was, his clever way to kill Trump? I'm not saying that, because I'm not saying I can read his mind. What I am saying is, if it were me, and I definitely know that if you're using 86 to talk to a hitman, it would be about violence. If I saw some seashells on the beach, I wouldn't necessarily connect that with any violent thought. But it doesn't mean he thought that way. Now, would you agree that this topic is really fucking boring? Because we don't know what he was thinking. It's not going to go anywhere. As long as there's a common usage of the word 86 and he's not even the one who arranged the shells, he's not going to get arrested. It's just something to talk about where we all just say the same fucking things over and over again. Oh, but don't you know that he's so smart? He's so smart that he would know that means kill him. Okay. You don't have to say it over and over again. All right. So how about we just never talk about this again? Agreed? All right. Mario Knopfel was calling out something from Scitec Daily. Apparently, there's what could be a really big discovery. So they found a way to use something called tin perovskite, which is a mix of tin and crystal-like structures, to split water into clean hydrogen. And apparently it's stable, which is a big deal, and it's efficient and cost-effective. And you could basically just use this to create unlimited hydrogen. Now, the next seashell arrangement, we'll talk about voting for the budget. Okay. See how mad you're getting? See, if you're feeling anger about that Comey topic, it's because you know you're wrong. That's what's causing the anger. You know you didn't have a good take. And I called you out on it, and you're like, "Rah, rah, rah." Anyway, so apparently this would, you can use just sunlight and water and turn it into hydrogen. And it could be this huge leap toward, green energy. I wonder if it's real. Seems almost too good, doesn't it? But maybe we'll see. Well, you know how the Democrats are having trouble finding a leader? That they all seem to be losers. Well, Stacey Abrams was on MSNBC, and she was asked what the Democrats need to do to win. And her take was they need to focus on their values, not their policies, their values. And she called out DEI as like one of their top values. So in order to win, they need to focus on DEI. They're not really sending their best, are they? I totally want Stacey Abrams to focus on DEI and run for president. See how that goes. Not so well. Well, there's some kind of a bomb went off at a Palm Springs fertility clinic. And the FBI is calling it an intentional act of terrorism. I wonder if there are any kind of suspicious things that are happening at the same time. So there's an intentional act of terrorism that would be blamed on the far right, right? Because it's a fertility clinic. So isn't this evidence that the far right are the dangerous ones? Is that the way it'll be told? I wonder if there are any other stories that are sort of in the same vein at the same time. Oh, here's one. It's about combat sport clubs. Combat sport clubs. Now, I'm going to tell you the story, and I want you to see how many red flags you can pick out. Number one, it's on CBS. So it's a CBS news story. Bing. Okay, that was the easy one because you don't trust them for news. But what they say is that combat sports clubs have been used to boost recruitment for white nationalist hate groups. Oh. So at the same time that a bomb went off at a fertility clinic, CBS News was all ready to drop a story about white nationalist hate groups. That's probably just a total coincidence, right? Bing. And that's according to a report released by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Ping. Remember, I always tell you, if you know what happened, you don't know anything. But if you know who happened or who is involved, you might know a lot. So now we've got CBS reporting on the Southern Poverty Law Center. You know anything about that group? Well, that group is not exactly credible, at least with the right-wing part of the world. All right, and the report, they've been tracking the efforts of the Patriot Front. Ping! So they had all lined up a story about the Patriot Front. Well, that's kind of interesting timing. And apparently the Patriot Front, they say, is a white nationalist movement that was formed following the deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Ping, 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 ping. The Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, I don't believe that was organic. I think that was somewhat obviously some kind of an op. I mean, like really obviously. So they're tying it to that. So far we've got CBS, the Southern Poverty Law Center, Patriot Front, and the Charlottesville event. It's all in the same story. Does that activate anything for you? It gets better. So Robert Rundo is the founder of the white supremacist group in Southern California, and he's the one credited with introducing this idea of the active clubs, right? So what do we know about Robert Rundo? Well, according to CBS, he was arrested in Romania in 2023. Ping. After the U.S. requested his extradition on federal rioting charges. He was sentenced to 2 years and effectively received a time-served ping sentence, being released in December of 2024. Does any of that story sound organic and real to you? I'm going to say there's not a single thing here that looks credible. Not a single thing. Now, I don't know what's true and what isn't, but in terms of credibility, this has every signal for not being real, every one. And it dropped at the same time as that bomb went off at the fertility clinic. I wonder if we're on the verge of the fake news talking about the big problem with these far-right extremists, which would be sort of right on time. Were you not expecting that? Didn't we all know that was coming? Of course we did. Is it this? I don't know. Well, in other news, according to The Hill, so Trump is mad at Walmart and lambasted them over raising their prices because of tariffs. And this is what Trump said. He said, quote, Walmart should stop trying to blame tariffs as a reason for raising prices throughout the chain. So Trump said this on Truth Social. Walmart made billions of dollars last year, far more than expected. And then Trump says, between Walmart and China, they should, as is said, eat the tariffs and not charge valued customers anything, he added. I'll be watching, and so will your customers. Well, now, if Trump can pull this off, I'll be very impressed. But the normal way these tariffs would kind of express themselves is if it were a low margin item. Walmart's not going to sell low margin items for a loss because there's an extra charge that eats up the entire margin. And I don't know if these are high margin. So if they're low margin things, they pretty much have to pass along the expense to the customer or else get out of the business. But if it's high margin stuff, then he's got a bit of an argument, which is you should maybe eat it. But I don't think the president should be telling a private company how to price things. It feels like a little bit of a, overreach. But it's very key to his whole strategy because if everybody starts raising prices, then his tariff idea looks like a worse idea. And Walmart's sort of the canary in the coal mine, if they go first. But they're also the biggest canary. So I imagine if Trump can bully Walmart into not raising prices, then other retailers are going to say, all right, we don't need this trouble. We don't need this kind of trouble aiming at us. So maybe we should ease some of this tariff. But in any case, it's not. In any case, it still looks like a tax on somebody. All right. You've heard this story before, but I'm going to add something to it. So the Oklahoma State Superintendent of Schools, Ryan Walters, he was on TV talking about the fact that Oklahoma is going to be teaching their students that there were irregularities in the 2020 election. And they're going to let the students make up their own minds if those irregularities are a coincidence or had some good reason for them, or a sign of some kind of rigged election. Now, I like it if it's going to help them do reasoning and just figure it out on their own. But let me say this: if the 2028 election, whoever's running, if the 2028 election ends up with having the same amount of outrageous Democrat votes as Biden did in 2020, then I am willing to say that 2020 was not rigged. However, if I had to bet, I'd put a pretty big bet on, as long as the Republicans are sending out their lawyers to watch all the voting places like they did in 2024, as long as it's being watched carefully, if they only get the same amount of votes that you would expect in a normal trend line, like every other election, because the number of people who vote Democrat is kind of consistent. And so if it's consistent with the past but not 2020, I'm going to say, oh, there it is. There's your, it's not exactly proof, but it would be good enough for me. If I saw that they could not reproduce the number of votes they got in 2020, even 8 years later when there were more people who could vote, I'm going to say, okay, 2020 was definitely rigged. Because if you throw on top of that the bellwethers all went crazy just that 1 year, and if all the bellwethers work in 2028 and the number of votes looks like the trend line and not like 2020, 2020 was rigged. I'm just going to say that. So I think we can find out in 2028. So as you know, Representative James Comer is going to bring in people to testify to Congress about the Autopen. So, Biden used the Autopen, or somebody used the Autopen, we don't know who, and it was signing the things that Biden should have been signing. And apparently most of the signatures were Autopen, which raises the question, who was actually in charge? But I did a little bit of research. Well, actually, somebody else grokked it and posted it to find out what is the process for getting something signed with the Autopen. Wouldn't you assume that even if the president were on vacation or something, that the president would still have to sign something? And what they'd sign would be, instead of the bill, which would not be physically where the president is if they're on vacation or something, they'd sign at least a memo. They would say, I authorize you to use the Autopen for this purpose. And then there would be further documentation of who got that memo and when they executed it. Now, did James Comer already get all that? So wouldn't he have by now requested the paper trail? Because there would be a paper trail. It's not just that suddenly there's an Autopen signature. That's not a thing. The only way the Autopen is going to be used is if there's a chain of orders that you can see from the top guy to the Autopen operator. It's going to be locked up, and there's probably only one person who has access to it. So how do we not already know that chain? Or it could be that we don't trust that even if Biden signed a memo saying use the Autopen, that he knew what he was signing. So maybe this exercise is more about embarrassing the Democrats and keeping this in the news. I don't think this is going to turn into anything. It doesn't seem to me that at the end of this, we're going to find out that there was somebody else running the country. Probably not. But it certainly keeps the Democrats on their back feet. There's a study, the source is CBS on this. Well, CBS is writing about it, but they didn't do the study. That 3 days of silence makes your brain grow new memory cells. So researchers found that when your brain gets quiet, it gets smarter, basically. So that you should do 2 hours of real quiet a day where you turn off your devices and you're not talking to anybody and you're just sitting there quietly. Now, how many of you have 2 hours extra per day that you weren't doing something important and you could just sit there quietly? Do any of you have 2 hours a day that you could do that? You know, I've had recommended to me by very smart people that I should get up and meditate for an hour before I get busy. And I thought to myself, who has an hour when they wake up? I'd love to have an hour to just sit there, but who has an hour to do that? I don't know. I'm sure there's something to it, but well, Trump said that he's going to talk to Putin on Monday and try to sort out this whole Ukraine-Russia war thing. And then he's going to talk to Zelensky afterwards, and then after him, the NATO members. And Trump says, hopefully it will be a productive day, a ceasefire will take place. I don't think any of that's going to happen. Do you think there's any chance of getting peace in Ukraine? All the indications are that Putin is not interested. So unless he's got some way to put extreme pressure on Putin, and he might make some threats about further sanctions and stuff like that, but he better have a hell of a threat to change Putin's mind, because I'm pretty sure that Putin doesn't want peace at this point. I think he's just waiting everybody out. He just probably figures, okay, they're going to give up eventually. You know, it might take me 5 more years, but they'll give up. They'll just get tired of funding this losing Ukraine. Maybe. Well, in other news, Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei, am I saying that right? Khamenei. They all have names that sound like that. He posted on X, the dangerous, deadly, cancerous tumor in West Asia must and will be eliminated. Would that be Israel? And if we think we're doing a peace deal with Iran, and as of today, the supreme leader is saying the deadly cancerous tumor in West Asia must be eliminated and will be eliminated, that doesn't sound like he wants a lot of peace. That sounds like he's developing a nuke. But then the president of Iran, who doesn't have much power compared to the supreme leader, but the president says that the messaging coming from the U.S. is all basically ambiguous. I think Trump said that we have given Iran a proposal, and Iran says, we don't have any proposal. What are you talking about? And we don't even know what you want. So the tough part, as I understand it, is that Iran wants the ability to enrich uranium to any level. But if you ask them, will you agree to not make nukes? They would say, yeah, we totally agree. We won't make nuclear weapons. But you can't take from us our ability to enrich our own uranium. To which I say, this is a tough one, because Iran is it's a sovereign situation, and they should be able to enrich uranium as much as they want, anytime they want. Now, I can see why we would say you can't make a weapon, but if they can enrich uranium, and they're really, really good at it, and they can enrich it up to weapons grade, they had the right equipment and the right time and everything, it's as good as saying they're going to have a nuclear weapon. So, on one hand, you could see why a country would say, why do you get to decide how much uranium we enrich? That's nobody's business but our own. And we're enriching it for, I don't know, medical uses and all that, domestic, nuclear, whatever. So you can see why they would kind of hold tight on that. Like, you can't tell us how much uranium we can enrich. And at the same time, we can see why the United States would be tough on you can't even enrich, because it would be the same as saying you can have a bomb. You know, if you get to the point where it only takes a few weeks for you to enrich it enough that it's a bomb, at the same time you're getting better and better at producing missiles, non-nuclear missiles. Well, that's really just giving you permission to make a bomb. EJ says, Scott, does Israel have nuclear weapons? What kind of question is that? Literally everybody knows that. So is that a serious question? You're just trolling. So yes, everybody knows that we're not looking at a fair situation where both of them have nukes. But nobody expects Israel to use a nuclear weapon in an offensive way, do they? But we do think, then why can't Iran? That's just a stupid fucking question. Really? Do I have to explain it? Do I have to explain why we don't mind that our friends and allies have nukes, but we don't want the guy who just said he wants to wipe out the cancer of a certain country? Do you think those are the same? If Iran struck first, they would be completely obliterated. Yes. But we still don't want them to have a nuke, because they could threaten that they're going to use it, and it would change the whole balance of power. So if you're saying, what would be fair from, some completely hypothetical stand, what would be fair is that everybody could have a nuke. If you're saying what will work, you don't want the crazy ones to have a nuke. So I guess the real question is, why would Iran even want to get so close to a nuclear weapon? It's to use it, or to use it as a threat, and that would be almost as good. So stop asking stupid questions. That's just stupid. All right. So it looks to me like there's no way to make a deal with Iran. So I would expect no peace deal. All right, that's all I got for today. And I'll remind you that Owen Gregorian's going to have his spaces right after this. So I'm going to say hi to the locals people privately, but that'll just give Owen enough time to set up his spaces, and then we can meet over there. Okay? I'll probably drop into that as well. All right, everybody. Happy Sunday. Thanks for joining. Is Comey claiming he found them arranged that way? Nobody's claiming that he arranged them. So yes, I believe the story is that he found it, not that he did it. That's my understanding. All right, EJ, drop dead. All right, everybody else, we'll see you at Owens, and let me do some private on locals.